Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Bard Education's Speech of the Week. My name is Mary Hartman, and I'm Director of Education at Bard on the Beach Shakespeare Festival. We created this program as a way to connect and to create in this virtual space when we can't gather in person. But I love the fact that after all of these months and through these months, we have been gathering. And as we do, I'd like to invite you to take a moment, wherever you are, to appreciate where you are and to acknowledge the history, the culture, the spirit of that place and your connection to it. We at Bard on the Beach are on the unceded territory of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh people. We are grateful to be here, and we're grateful for the opportunity to gather with all of you. If you would like to access the live captioning, you can click on the CC at the bottom on the right-hand side of your screen. You can click on that, and then you can select show subtitle or hide subtitle as you choose. Speech of the Week is brought to you by Bard Education, and our mission is to inspire community through dynamic, engaging experiences of Shakespeare. And through these last several months, we have tried to be as dynamic and as engaging as possible, given the circumstances. And for that, I would like to thank Katie Johnstone, Melanie Heapler, Santana Berryman, all of our teaching artists, and the rest of the administrative team at Bard on the Beach for helping to make all of this possible. A special thank you this evening to the magnificent Ava Forsyth, who has stepped up to host us this evening. I'd also like to take a moment to thank the sponsor of Speech of the Week, and that is Blue Shore Financial, for their generous support. Now, I am delighted to welcome this evening's very special guest artist, Christopher Gaze. For many of you joining us, Christopher needs no introduction. However, just to share a bit, I have lost your bio, Christopher. I had it on my screen and it went away. Give me a moment. Christopher Gaze is, of course, best known as the founder and artistic director of Bard on the Beach Shakespeare Festival. And we have been going strong since 1990. Christopher hosts the Vancouver Symphony Orchestra's popular Tea and Trumpet series, and also their annual traditional Christmas concerts. Christopher plays a leading role in British Columbia as an advocate for the arts in general. And Christopher, your passionate dedication to Bard on the Beach has fueled our growth into one of the largest professional theatre companies in Canada, drawing a total of almost 2 million patrons since you founded the company. Christopher's many honors include Canada's Meritorious Service Medal, honorary doctorates from UBC and SFU, the Mayor's Arts Award for Theatre, and the Order of British Columbia. Christopher, I am just so delighted to welcome you as the final special guest artist for Speech of the Week. Welcome.
Well, thank you, Mary. That's a very generous introduction. And it's lovely to be here with you and so many of the people that are passionate and so supportive of Bard. And we reach out to them and thank them for that support, especially, as you suggested, through the last couple of years, which have been awful tough for a lot of people. But you have made Bard Education, with all the help that you just mentioned, so robust that we've been able to keep in contact with a lot of people in Bard Education and kept people's minds lively and lovely too, probably.
And lovely.
Yeah. Anyway, so thank you very much.
Well, a big impulse behind Speech of the Week is inviting everyone to kind of connect with and celebrate the actor within them. And so at the beginning, at the heart of all of these incredible contributions that you make to our community, you are an actor. And so should we talk for a little bit about your approach as an actor? So what is your practice? Actor Christopher Gaze, when you're approaching a Shakespeare piece for the first time, how do you wrap your mind around it? How do you dive in with your heart and your imagination and your intelligence and explore? What do you do?
Well, I should say, first of all, and I don't like saying it really, because I can hardly believe it happened. I didn't kind of mean it to happen, but I just became too busy, I think, in my role as artistic director and all the other things I'm involved in with Bard and all over, to be on the stage, apart from introducing things, hosting things, narrating things, Vancouver Symphony with Bard, whatever. So your question, if I was back up on the stage again, I had an innate ability, Mary, to somehow be able to read Shakespeare and sound like it was making sense, even though it might be the first time that I read it, especially if I was reading it to others. Now, if I'm to play the part, and I don't know what that is to do with, I think it's just a great sense of rhythm. I think it's a sense of confidence in the text. And I think more than anything for me, with Shakespeare, and this may have radiated into our company actually, it just has to make sense. Mm-hmm. It can't just be a clever way of saying things that please me. Some sort of fancy in me. It has to make sense. And so people can hold on to as much of it as possible to follow the story. So I try so hard, and sure every good actor does, to make the text make sense, understand it, filter it, and ask questions, research, and rehearse as much as you can. Find other actors who want to read it and get inside it, and practice it and repeat it, and are inspired by it, and so forth. It ain't easy. Shakespeare is a big challenge to actors. Some actors have an innate ability to play it. I may have been, that's a little grand of me to say it perhaps, but I just felt even as a young man, Mary, when I was in boarding school and got an opportunity to study a Shakespeare play, Julius Caesar, or Much Ado, whatever it was that we were studying, I just seemed to get it, and it didn't bore me. It didn't frustrate me. And I found the beauty in it. So these are some of the things that I hold on to without talking endlessly more.
Did your parents take you to theater when you were very small?
They did. Mum.
The glorious joy, Dave.
Yes. I wish she was here tonight. I should have invited her over. But anyway, yeah, Mum took us, my sister Sarah and I, to see Richard III. I remember that at a great house, which was quite in the vicinity of, less than 10 or 15 miles away, Polesden Lacey. And you've spent some time in England, Mary, mm-hmm. And it's not unusual that Shakespeare people that have passions for it play in the grounds of great homes, or at Oxford or Cambridge, or of course in Regent's Park and so forth. Anyway, so I did see Richard III as a young man, and I mean 10, 11, and was just wowed by it. Wowed by this bad, terrible person, Richard III, Duke of Gloucester, who somehow wins the audience over, and you become beguiled by it, and want him to have what he wants. And of course, it's terrible things happen, but that's the genius of Shakespeare's play. Anyway, that was a big wow for me. And the other one was Julius Caesar, and going to see the film of that. at the Odeon in Guildford, England. Sorry, in England. And my
Is that
little
the one
sport,
with Marlon Brando and James Mason and
John Gielgud.
John Gielgud? Wow, yeah.
Yeah, I as a tiny anecdote, I had dinner in about 1976 with John Gielgud, Sir John Gielgud, and he talked quite a lot about that film and told one or two sort of racy stories, which I shan't repeat tonight, but another time perhaps. But no, he well, of course, a legend of the British theatre, and a great storyteller too. But anyway, we saw the Julius Caesar, and my mother told me, because I was young, and she said, "Now listen, children, there's a terrible murder that takes place fairly near the beginning of this film, but you mustn't worry about it because all the blood that you see is really only tomato ketchup." And so apparently the story goes, maybe it be apocryphal, but Mum says it happens that when they was et tu brute and everyone was doing the deed on poor old Julius Caesar, I stood up and calmed everybody by saying, "Don't worry, everyone, it's only tomato ketchup." And there we are. There we go.
Oh, that's brilliant. How old were you?
We'd have to check back, and we'd have to Google. Maybe Ava will Google for us when the film came out. But I should think it was maybe late 50s, early 60s.
Wow. And when did you know you wanted to be an actor?
I think it wasn't long after that. I was born in 1952. I'm 69 now. And I think when I was 10 or 11, I remember asking my father, we had a family firm, W.H. Gaze and Sons was the family firm, been going almost 100 years. My father was the managing director. My uncle was the chairman. It's quite a big company, building company in Kingston upon Thames, in England. And so the door was open. I was the last of the Gazes. All the family had been in it over the decades. And then there was me. And I said to my dad, "What do I have to do to get into your company, Daddy?" And he said, "Well, I think you should go to university and study civil engineering." And I just remember thinking, I don't know what civil engineering is, but I can't do that. I can't do it. As much as I adored him and loved, proud of the company and everything, because it was a fairly big company. I was the sort of person, I know a lot of people are different than this, but I was the sort of person that had to have a target. I had to know what I wanted to do. I wasn't good at a blank slate. And so I decided at that time, based on the fact that my parents were big in amateur dramatics, this must have been a big influence on me. And I remember going to the village hall on a Sunday when I was out on an exeat from school and asking someone, as in this darkened, very ordinary village hall, but in the dark, everything becomes sort of fantastic, especially with footlights and stage lighting and a beautiful red curtain. And people busying themselves on stage, making the set. And someone said to me, "You like this, don't you, Christopher?" And I said, "Well, it's magic, isn't it? It's beautiful." And he said, "For some people, they do this for a living." I said, "What was that?" "They do this for a living." I said, "You mean they get paid to do that?" And he said, "Yes." And I remember thinking, that's it. But I had a flair for it. There was no question. I was extrovert. I loved fooling, I suppose, and dressing up and performing. And my mother would have me in her little Christmas shows in the barn and just behind the pub. And I always sang things. And I could sing nicely. And yeah, it just became my life. And I never put it down. I never stopped. And I was, and at last, I was not a successful student, but this was something I could do. And I was proud of it. And when I auditioned for the National Youth Theatre and the theatre schools, I got in. So everything was telling me, you've got something worthwhile, go for it. And that's what I did.
Wow. And so were you always drawn to Shakespeare in particular, or did that evolve? Because you have done things that aren't Shakespeare throughout your career, but it's mostly been Shakespeare. Why is that? Or when did that start? Or what's that about?
Curiously, when I came to Canada 46 years ago now, 1975, Robin Phillips was at his heights, or certainly becoming into the golden days of Robin Phillips' time at Stratford as the artistic director, a really remarkable actor and remarkable director, remarkable leader of Stratford, really exploded that place. I think he did anyway. Curiously, I went to the Shaw Festival, not to the Stratford Festival. So I had my dose of George Bernard Shaw, 76, 77, 79, and then I came west. So I never played at Stratford, which it seems a bit odd. But when I did come west, in 1980, I went into the Shakespeare Festival in Edmonton. Did that in 80 and 81, and 83 and 84 in Vancouver. And whilst I was in Edmonton, I was in Shakespeare play. Whilst I was in Douglas Campbell's company back in England in 73, 4, I was in, I played Hal, Prince Hal in Henry IV Part 1. I played Oswald to Douglas's Lear, that kind of thing. So lots of Shakespeare. And really, I enjoyed it so much. I just loved it, mesmerized. And I was with some pretty impressive people. The Richard III in Edmonton, directed by Peter Coe, had a lot of Stratford actors in it. And the great Ron Moody, who played Fagin in both the play and the film of Oliver. And so these were always, it was always enforcing the fun and excitement and relish and guts and courage and fascination for these glorious words. And so I think, especially with those two Shakespeare festivals, both in Edmonton and here, that's where I saw the opportunity for Bard. And then, so a lot of it was by accident, Mary. It's by accident, circumstance. And here we are today, all these years later. It's made up a large portion of my life.
Mm-hmm. And it's interesting to me because, you know, you were part of supporting and celebrating and nurturing our film Done Undone that we released this past season, which really asks the questions, difficult questions about, you know, should we be doing Shakespeare anymore, and what does it mean to be a Shakespeare festival, and so forth. So as we all continue to ask those questions and struggle with those questions, what are some of your thoughts around that?
Well, it's been gradual, and then it's sped up.
Mm-hmm.
I think would probably, perhaps you would describe it that way. The traditions of Shakespeare have been, we're at a certain level for so many decades. And then, and definitely in my lifetime, started to shift and change. One could, well, I guess and you'll probably correct me, but one of the major shifts was in the late 60s with Peter Brook's Dream. Now, I don't want to go off your question here, but he made Midsummer Night's Dream extremely different. He looked at it, broke with traditions, and was sort of sensational in a new, innovative way. So the 70s, 80s went on. I was always troubled by what I thought were abstract versions of Shakespeare that didn't let the story, well, the story was not clear. People conceptualized Shakespeare. I don't care for that. But anyway, this is my personal taste. The shifts that I think you're really talking about are the relevancy of Shakespeare as our film, our film, which you wrote, Done, Undone, really got.
Kate Besworth, written by Kate Besworth, yeah.
Oh, right, Shakespeareans with you, yes.
Yeah.
Kate Besworth, yes, Kate Besworth's play, Done, Undone, which we made into a film, deals with all the sort of things that I never thought we'd have to deal with, the relevancy of Shakespeare. And when that question was posed to me initially, I was sort of shocked by it, deeply shocked. And of course it's relevant, you know. And then you have to start wrapping your head around it. And that's what we've done. And that's why we did Kate's play, made into a film, because that's what we chose to do when we couldn't do the play.
But I must say, I'm just so pleased that we're asking these questions, because, you know, I think something like Shakespeare, which has, I think, truly infinite potential. I mean, for me, one of the things that I delight in most about Shakespeare, of course, there's the language, because the language just thrills me. But the other thing that thrills me is how incredibly open to interpretation Shakespeare is, that it can go in so many different directions and still be true. And it can resonate in so many different ways for so many different people. And so I think what we're really interrogating and really shaking up and really challenging are a lot of the assumptions and the traditions around Shakespeare. So I can imagine from your perspective, I know from my perspective and how long my career's been, that I'm seeing all these shifts, but I can imagine it's a little bit longer for you, the sort of traditions that were ingrained in you, I imagine, in theater school. Definitely. And how that is what's getting kind of shaken up. And so from your perspective, what do you find most exciting about this kind of, I guess it's a shaking up?
It is a shake up, isn't it? It's a real shift. And it is, I actually find it thrilling. I think it is time, actually, that this happened. As Done Undone expresses, we're going to see, not with all the plays, but with many of them, adaptations done that excise certain things that are not acceptable in society anymore, or make us deeply uncomfortable. And it was all expressed in Done Undone. I won't go over that, but my general excitement is, I'm filled with, I think it will re-energize Shakespeare. These plays have lived for 400 years, and they will, this is going to lift them up into the next decade, or the next century, whenever. It will lift them up and drive them on, because they will make them relevant. We will do that. Intelligent theatre makers will do that. And we employ people like that. And so I'm very excited about it. And I thought how thrilling to watch, for instance, it was 2 years ago now, over 2 years, that we produced The Taming of the Shrew, and how cleverly Lois Anderson did that, giving Kate and Petruchio as much of an equal balance as one could, so that there wasn't this and that downward pressure that is not comfortable to us anymore. But to see the dynamic of this glorious couple coming together in a match. And I think she did that brilliantly. And we will go on doing that with many of the plays.
Yeah, and it was fascinating just how simple and subtle some of the changes that she made, where it almost felt like sleight of hand, where it's like, oh, wait a minute, how did that happen? Because it was just so sort of seamlessly done. And it was all kind of turned either sideways or on its head or just really reimagined.
It's
quite exciting.
Did it too, with the two gentlemen of Verona, that final moment of to head off with the guys.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely thrilling.
Long pause, and then no, we're going off this way. Great, genius, brilliant.
So let's go back to the speech for a second, and our revels now are ended. When did you start doing that? And oh, actually, before I go to this question, I should mention, for those of you tuning in, if you have questions, please go right ahead and use the Q&A function. We'll leave time at the end to answer questions, but ask them at any time. And if we can work them into the conversation, we absolutely will. And the Q&A function you can find down the bottom towards the right. So when did you start using Our Revels Now Are Ended to close out our annual Shakespeare Festival?
I should think it's close to, we've been doing it ever since you've been with us, Mary.
Yes. And for those who've never seen this, we should probably share that this is on the final night of our festival season, our festival which takes place at a glorious place called Sanok, under tents. It's also known as Vanier Park. And on our main stage, our BMO main stage theater, after the final performance, everyone who was part of creating our season gathers on the stage. And Christopher, you say a few words, you talk about the next season that's coming up. We are all holding candles and the lights go down and you deliver this speech, Our Revels Now Are Ended. So when did that start and what was your thinking and what does it mean to you?
I, like all good things, and perhaps like Shakespeare, I stole it. I'd like to say it was an original idea, but that's not the truth. In about 1997, 98, somewhere in there, the late 90s, we joined the Shakespeare Theatre Association. It used to be the Shakespeare Theatre Association of America, but then everyone realized, well, it's kind of global, so let's just call it the STA, Shakespeare Theatre Association. You've had a lot to do with them, Mary. But nevertheless, in those days that we started a relationship and we attended the conferences and that. And when I was able to go was generally our season ended towards the end of September, and go down to Ashland. It was always around whenever our Thanksgiving is, in the beginning of October, that Monday, or that weekend rather, they would close their big theatre in Ashland, outside theatre. And so I would see that show, and I loved to see that show. So it was the closing of that theatre. They would have the actors in the show, and many of their staff would show up and would come on stage. And a particular actor, one of their celebrated performers, would deliver that speech. And it was an honor for that individual. And so I just thought this was magic, the candles and that kind of thing. So I just thought, well, this was wonderful, it's pure magic, we should do this. So that's what we did. It probably started maybe close to 20 years ago. And so that's what we've done ever since, and it's become a hallmark. We do it our own way, not necessarily their way, and it's an exquisite way, I think we all agree, of ending our season.
And tell us more about that speech and your connection to it, what it feels like to deliver it under those circumstances.
Well, that particular speech is, of course, it is exquisite, and taken out of context, it is such a reverie out of context. It's like a little incantation, like a little prayer. a beautiful poem that really, in a sense, is a kind of a story of our lives. It's a poetic way of expressing that anyway. And our little life is rounded with a sleep is a very comfortable and beautiful turn of phrase that Shakespeare magicked. And so I feel like I'd like to say the speech. Can I say it?
Of course, why not? As long as those who are going to be doing the speech for themselves don't just imitate you.
Okay,
But
well, then maybe I should.
I encourage everyone to do it your own way. But yeah, of course, do it.
Maybe I shouldn't. Maybe.
No, go ahead, Christopher.
All right. So just imagine you are on the stage, everyone that's watching and listening. We're standing together on the stage, and you are participants in Bard. And you're holding a candle, being careful not to set fire to some gorgeous wig that's in front of you. Don't do that. Don't do that. But you're contemplative. You're proud. This is the end of the season. We've made it through. We've entertained maybe 100,000 people. The night is chilly. It's getting late, but it's time to say goodbye. Our revels now are ended. These, our actors, as I foretold you, were all spirits and are melted into air, into thin air. Like the baseless fabric of this vision, the cloud-capped towers, the gorgeous palaces, the solemn temples, the great globe itself, yea, all which shall it inherit, shall dissolve. And like this insubstantial pageant faded, leave not a rack behind. We are such stuff as dreams are made on, and our little life is rounded with a sleep.
Thank you, Christopher.
Okay, it's beautiful, really is beautiful, but it is, as we've said, Mary, out of context.
Yeah, that does make a difference, doesn't it? It's funny that so many people seem to have grabbed onto this idea of Prospero equals Shakespeare, and that this is Shakespeare's farewell to the theater. And to be honest, I hope that Shakespeare was nothing like Prospero, because Prospero is not the most admirable character in the world. Doesn't do the most admirable things. Now, like most Shakespeare characters, there are definitely some things to admire and some things not to admire. And I think it's really valuable for us to appreciate the nuance and the complexity. But yeah, it's not as simple as just, oh, isn't Prospero great? Not at all. And that's another exciting thing about the courage that a lot of theater artists have nowadays to dive into those really tricky, complex, difficult, fraught aspects of the plays, and to do it with courage and respect for our audiences. I kind of love that. But we should turn to some questions. We've got some coming in. Craig would like to know, Christopher, what character did you most enjoy playing and why?
I think over the years, Craig, I loved, my favorite play has always been Midsummer Night's Dream. If you have to have a favorite play, and it's a question everyone, but I wants to know, so pure fun, Midsummer Night's Dream, I played both parts, Bottom, I played them both twice actually, I played Bottom, Nick Bottom, and he's beautiful, beautiful. I just love him. I love the nature of when he wakes up and I've had a dream. Pass the wit of man to say what dream it was. Man is but a patched and so on. That was it real? Did it really happen? And always when I played it, I'd speak to the director and say, "We've got to have something." It's like a child with Santa Claus, Father Christmas, with the carrots or bits of celery or cake or whatever you leave out for Santa, and you can see half of it's been eaten or it's gone or whatever mum and dad have done. But for a child to actually believe that he was there, and so I love that in Bottom. I always, did it really happen? And maybe there was a rose that he had given to Tanya or she'd given to him, and he sees that lying on the stage when he wakes up. And so there's a sort of mystery. I love that. Anyway, Bottom was great. And I also loved playing Puck. Loved playing Puck. So much fun and getting involved with the lovers. And it was and Puck has so many beautiful speeches that I just reveled in playing. Jack shall have Jill, naught shall go ill, the man shall have his mare again, and all will be well. Beautiful. So those long answer to your sweet question.
Wonderful. Mary Beth would like to know, do you miss acting? We miss you acting.
Oh, that's very nice. That's very nice. Yeah, I do miss it. Do you know, Mary Beth, I've taken advice on this. I know it sounds harsh, but I have a job. My job is the artistic director of Bard, and I do one or two other things as well. And so I get around and I earn a living, and that's good, and that's a good thing. And so I'm comfortable in my life. So the important thing is to then give other people the opportunity. You've had a lot of opportunity. I've had a lot of opportunity, and I'm very comfortable in giving that opportunity to other people, especially if they're pure actors. A pure actor just gets their work from job to job, and so share it. And so that's the good advice I listened to was that, and I'm very comfortable with that. And also,
go ahead.
Just finish. I do think that there are so many actors, and I don't need anyone to say anything about this, but I think there are so many actors that are so much better than I am. So many people direct plays better than I do. My job, I believe, is to find those people and give them that opportunity. And I think every theatre company is different. Every artistic director is different, and everyone has different talents. I do have talents, and I have talents not only on the stage and to direct plays, but I can do other things too. Not everything, but I can do some things quite well. And so I really do focus on those and give opportunity to other people.
I think that's brilliant. And if I may draw a parallel for a moment and project onto you, I think your experience and sensibilities as an actor, I imagine, informs all of the other work that you do as artistic director, as champion, and that perspective is invaluable. I feel that way personally because I've worked as a professional actor earlier in my career as well. It's been 20 years though. But it was an invaluable experience for me, and it informs all of the work that I do in what this job is, which is in a way my calling, if you will. And what I can this is where I can make the most contribution, is doing what I do. And I imagine it's similar for you.
I love that phrase. I love that phrase. It's a calling.
Mm.
Yeah. I we'll be in the same boat together, rowing like mad.
I'd be delighted. I'm going to go to a different question now from Vanessa. You mentioned that out of context, this speech is said in a contemplative and reflective way, but in the context of the play, how might this speech be said?
Well, you're going to help me through this, Mary, but this comes at a moment where there's been a pageant that Prospero has conjured through his magic out of thin air.
With the support from all the spirits who are all playing the goddesses and the sunburned sicklemen and naiads and everything.
And all the people who've done him wrong, his enemies, are there, yes?
And Caliban is conspiring with Stefano and Trinculo to kill Prospero and take over the island. That's
right. That's right. And suddenly, in this gorgeous pageant, the most beautiful pageant, I must say, Mary, that we've done it twice with Meg Rose Tempest, and with Alessandro's music, which was just, I still listen to it. I have a little recording, and it's absolutely beautiful. But they're all singing this gorgeous song and this feast and celebration. It's wonderful. And suddenly Prospero remembers that they're out to get him, Caliban and Stefano and Trinculo. They're coming because he's heard that this is going to happen, but he's forgotten. Now he remembers. So he crashes through the celebration and tells everyone to stop and go away. And I can actually see this speech being done in a rage. I'm not saying that's the way I do it, but an actor might have. Our revels now are ended. You know, these are actors that I foretold you were all spirits, and they're melted into air. There's multiple choices you can make how you might say that, or even icy cold anger, because danger is coming and he has to deal with it.
I do think it's worth mentioning that the speech doesn't begin with our revels now are ended. Prospero says, "You do look, my son," speaking to Ferdinand, "you do look, I'm trying to remember it. You do look, my son, in a moved sort, as if you were dismayed. Be cheerful, sir. Our revels now are ended." So that's kind of an interesting launching point. Be cheerful. Which yes. I don't know what that says about the context, but I find it interesting.
Maybe because he's just told everyone to go away. He takes
yeah, well done, avoid, no more, like stops the performance right in the middle.
Stop the show. And then says to Ferdinand, his future son-in-law, it's all right. You can be happy. You're with Miranda. That's fine. I have to deal with something. But I'm sorry about this. But
here's a question. One of our attendees says, "My feeling is that the theater is perhaps becoming hostage to political correctness. Why can't we just accept that 400 years ago things were different and it's part of the story, just like fairy tales?" How would you answer that, Christopher? That's a complex one.
Yeah. Do you know, my instinct up until the last 17 or 18 years, where I've gradually shifted, I believe, without sounding perhaps too egotistical about it, that as I have changed my head and understanding of the world and the way of presenting Shakespeare, we have gradually shifted and changed the way we present it. present it over quite a few years now. I don't think we can go back to that. I think I do have friends who are extremely supportive of our company, who wish and desire us to present traditional Shakespeare. But I believe that traditional Shakespeare can be done once in a while, but we have to be awfully cautious that we don't get stuck in it. It becomes stale. I know from a sentimental point of view, it sounds like a wonderful idea, but I think the bulk of the new audience are looking for innovation and relevancy, as we've described before. And so tradition is becoming a path that we have to be awfully cautious about. I mean, there are traditions we can hold on to, and life is filled with traditions and is important. I love tradition, but in terms of presenting Shakespeare, just make sure that you're keeping up with the times. We've become a museum otherwise, and it's not animated and not interesting and not relevant.
One of my favorite things about theater is that conversation, right? Because no matter what is said on a stage, it's going to be heard by real people in real time. And it's who the audience is that keeps changing and growing. And so what we say has to keep changing and growing too, because it's a conversation. And yes, exactly what you said. Otherwise it becomes stale and dead and a museum piece, and that's not theater. Unless it's alive and listening. Like, we have to listen to our audiences as much as our audiences listen to us. Yes?
Yeah. We did, just back to your question, which is such an interesting and relevant question. We did the Scottish play in 18, when we did the Beatles, As You Like Them show. And in terms of tradition, that was pretty much on the money. So all is not lost. From time to time, you'll see what you really want to see at Bard. And hopefully you'll be moved and fascinated by the ingenuity of the new thoughts, of the new ways, of the conversation, as Mary calls it, so that we can be in there together, you and me.
Tom has a great question. What steps would you suggest to introduce Shakespeare to one's young children?
Bring them to Midsummer Night's Dream next summer. Of course, we, Mary and her team in our education world of Bard, we bring thousands of young people in early June and then through September. We'd like to bring many more, but we don't have the capacity for it. We just don't have enough performances for them. We hope to in years to come, I might add, but that's another story. I think there are lovely, Mary will have a better answer than mine probably, but I think there are lovely books which I have given to my grandchildren and read with them that are the Shakespeare stories told in beautiful ways, which can excite them. There are little films, videos and things like that. Some great educational tools which don't seem to be educational at all. They're wonderful fun. And that's the way education should be. But Mary, why don't you fill in a blank or two there?
Oh, absolutely. There are great storybook Shakespeare versions, one of which was written by a dear friend of mine, Tina Packer, which you can find pretty easily. There was a wonderful series of videos. They're about 30 years old now. I don't know if you have any luck finding them, the animated tales. And then, of course, there's the Shakespeareans, which we have created as an introduction to Shakespeare. It's an hour long, but you can watch it in little segments. And it's available for free on our website. So you can access it that way. But absolutely bring them to live performance, live theater, and play with them. Let them speak some words and be a fairy or be bottom or be a monarch. Yes, absolutely.
Mary, one thing that perhaps you could offer some advice on is I've often, when I've met mums and dads that ask a similar question and tell me when where their children go to school, they can, the schools, we go to so many schools, those workshops in schools, Mary, that sometimes for varying costs, some schools we go to for nothing at all, because there's that's what's best for that school. But that's a great way in the classroom too, because we have some great teaching artists that go in, don't we?
Absolutely. We go into schools and work with any age group. We have summer camp programs that have been going strong for ages 8 to 18 for more than 25 years. And we are exploring options for doing things with younger participants. So just, keep an eye on our webpage, subscribe to our e-news, and you'll be the first to hear. Christopher, a great question from the glorious Sarah Roa, who wants to know if you could give any advice to a young person learning / discovering Shakespeare for the first time. What would you share with them?
Isn't it wonderful? What wonderful words, what great ideas. Why don't you read the speech? Read it out loud. Or let's read it together. Let's discover what we can do with it. Let's try and understand who this character is. I always say to, slightly off your question, Sarah, but nevertheless, I always say, when I go into a classroom, I used to do that much more, but nevertheless, I always used to say, or get with young people, if you'd like to write a nice card to somebody for their happy birthday or because you think the world of them or whatever, have a look at Shakespeare. If you can't think of something apropos to say other than, I think you're super. You can find so many glorious quotes about affection or wisdom or knowledge or anything you want in Shakespeare. Have a look at that. But yeah, I just think it's if a child was interested, and I think my own sons. I was asked this the other day. My own sons, who are now 40. Thereabouts. I didn't respond. I didn't do all the things that you've just asked of me, Sarah, with my own lads, because I think I was afraid they were going to come into the theatre, and it's a hard to get on in theatre. It's a challenging life. It's a wonderful life, especially if you're working. But I do have quite a few grandchildren now. And I think I'm going to open the door to them much more, because I think it just opens not only Shakespeare to them, but a whole world of culture and the arts, every aspect you can think of. If you can fall in love with words and ideas and poetry and music and art and architecture, it's magic. It's the spice of life. It's the best of life. We all have to earn a living, but an appreciation of art and culture is life itself.
So Christopher, we've been talking in this speech about how our revels are ended, but ours are on the horizon. The revels are returning, and as we think about and prepare for and plan the 22 season, what are you most excited about?
Well, always over the years, Mary, well over 40 years now, I have seen the success of Midsummer Night's Dream, been a part of it many, many times. So I mentioned some to you on this call, but people love the play. So we're going to do a very big production of it this summer. That's why it's the only play in the BMO main stage. And there'll be, I think, 21 people in it. There's 3 or 4 dancers. We're just going to have a ball in there. Scott Bellis will direct it. And remember, many of you remember him in the very first year of Bard, I might add, in 1990, I directed that production. He played Francis Flute, who then becomes Thisbe in the play within the play. And you may remember him from some of those days, but also his Nick Bottom, the last couple of times we've done it, is just almost matchless. Just a marvelous performance, and especially when he was killing himself, and he plunged the knife in and screamed as if he really had put a knife in himself. Really, really funny. And Scott's directing the play. He knows it backwards, and so I'm fully expecting it'll be glorious. I'm also thrilled about Harlem Duet. This it's not a new play, but it's certainly in the last, gosh, I think it was written probably mid-90s, Mary, sometime there, by Janet Sears she lives in Toronto. But this will be, and the relevancy is the sort of a fellow story to Bard for us, and very, very interesting. I'm really delighted that we're doing it. It's a play of our times, and it's the kind of thing we should be doing, and we are. And we're going to do it in stock, so that means it will happen for 5 or 6 weeks in sort of late June, July, and then that will close. So there's limited opportunity to see it, so we all have to get in there and see it. And then shortly after that, on the Howard Family Stage, Douglas Campbell Theatre, we will be doing, Anita Rochon is directing a production of Romeo and Juliet. Charissa Richards, I should say, is directing the Harlem Duet. And Romeo and Juliet, and what it's both those, certainly Romeo and Juliet and Dream are the most attractive plays, perhaps, at a time when this will be 2022. The last season was in 2019. So we need to attract people back. People need to feel safe and comfortable coming to Bard, just like they used to in the old days. Yes, there'll be different protocols probably, but nevertheless, it's opening up now in a very protective, careful way, but it's all opening up. And God willing, it will go on this way so that we can present a wonderful, as I call it, a robust season, full out with Mary's work in education and with our work together in our theaters. So here we go.
Here we go. I'm sorry we didn't get to all of the questions, but one last, in a tiny moment that we have left, Christopher, any last advice for those who will be making our revels now or ended their own? Anything you want to tell them to support that endeavor? Just relish the text, relish it. You can do it whatever way you want to do it, but just, what I might say, eat this text alive. Our revels now are ended. You don't have to overact it. I'm a bit of a, if you say, well, Christopher's all right, he overacts a bit, doesn't he? Well, I probably do. But so never mind, you do it your way, but eat this text like a beautiful, rich,
and fresh pear, and it'll be wonderful.
I love that image. So thank you to everyone for tuning in tonight. If you are even remotely curious about doing your own version of our Revels Now Are Ended, I would strongly and wholeheartedly encourage you to do so. You're welcome to come and join us for a working session on Thursday. It's interactive with some of our teaching artists and amazing participants sharing ideas and strategies and questions with one another. And even if you can't come to the working session and you'd like to record yourself doing the speech, share it with us if you like, and we will put together a beautiful compilation of our participants doing the speech. And it's been a tremendous joy being able to do this. So I would like to thank you, Christopher. You are phenomenal. I would like to thank Blue Shore Financial, everyone on the BARD team, and all of you for tuning in. Until we meet again, farewell.